And we're back with more Shacknews awards, deliberations, nominations, and celebrations. And this is an interesting category. It's called Best Trendsetter. And here at Shacknews, we are very laser focused on trends, be it on social media or on Google Analytics. When it comes to search engine optimization, we're some of the best in the biz here. But there have been a couple of trends this year that really stuck out above other ones. So we thought we would sit here and debate the two or three or however many more there are. Uh, I think I got one that I'll nominate. Um, it's not going to win, and I might not even vote for it myself, but I think it would be poor form for us to not mention it in this category. So I'll just kick it off, and then we can talk about the other nominees. I think GameStop is one of the biggest trends we've seen this year. Uh, we can speak to just how intense the readership is for our articles regarding any news around GameStop this year. And also just the mainstream nature of this story. You have a lot of a lot of outlets that may not cover finance have found themselves having to cover finance this year because of what's going on at GameStop. People who didn't know what a short squeeze was in December of last year probably know what a short squeeze is now. A whole generation of people who were not even remotely interested in investing are now interested in investing and are paying attention on a tick to tick basis. It just seems undeniable that GameStop was a trend this year. And you could spread that out to include meme stocks or investing or whatever you want to. But to me, at the center of this has been GameStop, and it's still a very strong trend. It seems to be continuing into this week, where like right now we're in the middle of the week where they report earnings is when we're recording this. But I guarantee whatever article we write on earnings day is going to do a lot of traffic for us. And uh, not that every single article we write has to generate traffic. We want to inform the public whenever we're reporting news. It just seems like GameStop was this marriage of those two things, where Shacknews really had an opportunity to flex our knowledge in this space, and I think we've done probably the best job out of anyone in the video game space at covering this story this year. But yeah, I think GameStop trendsetter for me. But I'm sure there are probably better and more important trends that we could vote on this year. But
Well,
I wanted to get that out of the way first.
yeah,
Well, th- we did. Oh, sorry, Donovan.
well,
Go ahead.
no, I just before we had moved on from GME because we do have some probably more deserving nominees. I do want to say that like the game something really does transcend like the gaming conversation. Like I remember in like February and March, I had like my mom texting me about GME, like this person I had to drag to GameStop or beg to take me to GameStop all my life for the first time ever was hitting me up asking me about this place, and that was like a what the hell moment for me. So yeah, no, this thing is it's huge and it's turned a lot of people into investors. So I think it's
Echo
definitely
that.
worthy.
I had friends that don't ever dabble in investing, and they were messaging me and like, "Oh, I bought a share." Like people just wanted to be on the train, right? A
And
lot
it
of people didn't understand it, but they wanted to be a part of it. Like it was a massive, massive story, and it honestly hasn't lost a lot of steam throughout the year.
it's this combination of shareholder activism, populist movement, right? Because it's Main Street versus Wall Street largely. If you look at who's involved in the shares, I thought an interesting data point that the SEC gave us in their recent report was that 900,000 individual accounts traded GameStop that week, or those 3 days around when Robinhood and the rest of the brokers shut off the buy button. 900,000 individual investors bought and or sold the stock in that week. And I just think that's like, you don't really hear about that very often. Most stocks in the market are largely owned by institutions, hedge funds, banks, etc. What we got, some data points that we got from the shareholder meeting earlier this year, is that it really does appear that if you add Ryan Cohen's 13% stake to the stake of the movement, whatever you want to call us, GameStop longs that are individual investors, if you combine those two, we are the majority of the company. And that's rare, where individuals own more of the stock than Wall Street does. So I think that's another thing to mention there. But yeah, you're right, Donovan. Like, the amount of people that have asked me for advice this year is more than the last 5 combined. And before I ran Shacknews, I was an investment advisor. So it's not like I had any shortage of people asking me for advice after I retired from that business. But this year was something else. And it was really novice investors for the most part. And I've taken it as a responsibility on my part to at least help educate people on this topic. And I think that, once again, I think Shacknews has done a great job of that this year, of not really approaching this from an opinion standpoint, because I think a lot of people wanted to just say, this is stupid, this is illogical, let's not cover it, I don't understand how to cover it. More on my end, it was more, let's figure out what is the reportable story here. And trust me, the amount of, like, there's probably 2 stories that I didn't report on for every one that there is, because there's so much FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt that's spreading about this company. And there's also just lunatics out there that are fabricating, they're really trying hard to justify their investment thesis, and they come up with these most nonsensical things. Here's one example, and this is still out there. There is a rumor that Ryan Cohen, the chairman of the board at GameStop now, who owns 13% of the company, bought the Wu-Tang album from Martin Shkreli, and that he intends to distribute it as an NFT dividend to shareholders. That's an actual rumor that I've had to vet multiple times this year. And I have not reported on it because that's just nonsense. It's an example of, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope that somehow happens. But like, that's the level of work we've had to do here, because it is a lot of shit posters and meme lords that are in this stock. And it's a dangerous community in the sense that some people in this movement don't care about reality. They just want to make money, and they are spreading misinformation to do it. And that speaks to the trend. Even the trend on Twitter, if you do $GME or hashtag GME, it's been hijacked by those people who promote shitcoin cryptocurrencies, or AMC shareholders. AMC shareholders literally took Keith Gill's thesis and applied it to a stock that has nothing to do with his original work. So it just kind of speaks to that trend, that it became bigger than even GameStop itself.
Yeah. I mean, like, you want to talk, like, just moving outside the lane on a grand scale. This came before a televised congressional committee when Robinhood fucked up that hard by shutting everything down for a day. Because, like, and, like, you had people in Congress talking about a meme stock that was, like, and that's, like, absurd, just how much it blew up to the point where, like, we have actual, like, congressional hearings on what went wrong and what went right and who's at fault and who's to blame and all that stuff.
And we still don't know. Like, if you read the SEC report, they claim that the move in January that took the stock from $40 to $500, right? That move was not driven by a short squeeze. They claim that it was largely driven by speculation from individual investors. If you believe that, how the hell did the stock go from over 100% short interest, which is not even possible? How did it go from that to where it's like around 10% right now? So it's called into question the very integrity of the stock market, and it's put a spotlight on short selling disclosure and the lack thereof in the stock market. You know, you can go on Google and you can find GameStop short interest right now, and it's somewhere in the 10 to 20% area. But what you don't have is an explanation for what happened in January. And it, at its core, it's hard to be an individual investor, look at that, and say, this is a fair market. It's not. The regulators are not on your side. The brokers are not on your side. The banks have never been on your side. And I just think that it's pissed off the wrong kind of people. There's a guy I follow on Twitter. His banner says "Never piss off Reddit." It's in the Power to the Players logo, but it just says "Never piss off Reddit." I've never seen a more emboldened community than GameStop belongs. That they are the most stubborn people you'll ever meet, because they held it from 500 down to 40 when it sold off in February, and then they held it when it went from 40 to 350, and then they sold it when it dropped back down to the 140s, and then they're holding it in the 200s back down to 170. There's this not leaving meme. They're like, I'm not leaving. GME not leaving as a hashtag. I think that this is going to be a trend for a while. But I thought it was worth mentioning here, just because if you look at our literal page views on our website, GameStop definitely trended this year.
I agree with everything you said. You swayed me in another category that I felt also encapsulated what you said, and it's definitely important, but I think that on a scale of relative importance, what we've seen this year, which has really been brewing for a long time in the industry, is workers' rights movements. I'll let others elaborate on this, but as someone who's been part of the games industry, I haven't had it nearly as bad as any of the folks at Activision Blizzard or King or Ubisoft or Apple or anywhere else. And we're kind of extending our reach in this category to technology companies as well. So we're including Apple in this. And
because it is about broader engineers.
It's a broader movement in technology and
multimedia.
It's a Silicon Valley issue. It truly is a Silicon.
Like on a global scale almost. The spirit of Silicon Valley on a global scale. And there have been. Blizzard is a company that used to mean a lot to me. I've written literally hundreds of thousands of words about them, and I heard about some of this stuff on a smaller scale, and it was dealt with. I'm proud of that, but just the sort of things we've heard about this year, even it's hard to pick a worst occurrence or action from all this stuff this year.
There's no Olympics of suffering here. There's no gold medal in suffering here. Suffering is bad. And
what I mean is almost every week is it just seems to get worse.
Exactly.
And to the point where someone at Blizzard took her own life because she just felt so cornered physically, mentally, emotionally by her abuser. For me, workers' rights movement, the fact that people are standing up, literally in all the cases, walking out, and we're seeing it in a lot of traditionally minimum wage jobs as well, with fast food restaurants where employees will just hang. We quit. We're not paid enough for this shit, and just making it better. I'm not done, and just wanting to really get the point is being made. I think the message is being heard this year because it's really the perfect storm, right? You have COVID, you have people who are choosing, like, I could stay home and collect unemployment and not be just dragged through mud and shit and treated like garbage because of this. So this movement is really important to me, and I think important overall, just on a global scale. Go ahead, Blake.
I think it goes beyond just minimum wage workers and salaries. Like, you've seen John Deere strike this year for stuff. Kellogg's is still on strike right now. What? The meat packing strikes that have happened during the pandemic. There've been workers' rights is definitely bigger than the video game industry. It's definitely bigger than tech. And David, your point about COVID is very sound. That a lot of people who are on the front line, they're being paid in Ohio $7 an hour, have been saying, screw that.
You shouldn't have to put your life on the line to go and help other people who are just treating you like you're an inconvenience to them,
No, but in the video game industry specifically,
this
has been a problem for a very long time. Even the accusations that are coming up in this Blizzard movement specifically, a better ABK, date back 20 years, if not longer in some cases.
COVID is also germane because for the longest time, I was part of this too. I encountered this too. I needed to work remotely for reasons, but I was told, well, in game development, all the departments need to be in the same building. And okay, I see the logic in that. But then last year over to this year, everyone had to work remotely. And so we proved this can work. We work out the hiccups, and guess what? In a lot of cases, employees were happier and more productive. But now people are being told, oh, we need to go back to the office. Why? The fuck you do. It's just one of those issues that we now know. We have conclusive proof that no, we don't need to be there.
One of the things that is extremely impressive to me about the workers' right movement in tech and gaming is that if anyone here, and I'm sure we all has been in any kind of conflict, and what I mean by not like an immediately resolved conflict, but a personal conflict, like let's say you have a dispute with a family member or a friend, and it drags. Think about how absolutely exhausting that is to be able to maintain that level of negativity in your system. And I don't mean like you're being a negative person, but having to carry the weight of that negative encounter, that negative situation for days and weeks and months, to the point where eventually you get to a point, and most people do, where they just want to stop. They don't even want to win anymore. They just want out because they can't continue to function as a person anymore. And now think about how giant this fight is. And the groups that are engaging with this fight, they're engaging with the absolute power holders in the industry, billionaires that can squash them, that can take everything. And when they want to get a new job, they have to go get it from a different billionaire that has the same interests as the last billionaire that they work for. It is absolutely insane, and I want to appreciate how hard it is to stay in a fight like this.
It's a Sisyphean task, really.
It's your employer, and you're fighting your employer, and you're not quitting, and you're not walking away. And not only that, but look at how quickly we move from one story to the next most of the time, which is what makes Trendsetter a unique category. You know how hard it is to stay relevant?
Yeah.
In 2021, like, do you know how difficult that is? And look how long this has been going. And it's the one thing that gives me a whole lot of optimism that they might really make change here, is that it's not going away. How many times have you seen outrage just bloat away quickly?
Yeah, especially
and
like
this has been going on for a long time, and they deserve a lot of credit for being able to endure the fight, because endurance is such a massive amount of being able to stay in a negative situation with conflict.
But at the core of this movement is another aspect that has been kicked around the industry for a while. Unionization. It goes beyond just workers' rights. They need a union to hold the board and the executives accountable. And right now they don't have that. The industry is built on this use and abuse model, where you're a contractor, you're fired, And we just saw that with Raven this weekend. And we've seen it before at Activision Blizzard. 2 years ago they laid off a ton of people at Blizzard, and a year later they reported record revenues. Right?
Can I add something to that Raven situation?
Sure.
First of all, before going any further, I want to encourage everybody watching this to go click on the video for the Do It for Shacknews award, where we also go into this topic and we make a lot of salient points on this topic as well. But to speak to Raven, I got a great sense of deja vu reading that story, where basically the QA team had busted their asses for years, were promised something from the company, and then were let go. Because that same thing happened to me and my colleagues at Activision. Like back in 2008, 2009, we had carried that QA department for years, and we expected the company to compensate us for it. And instead, we were told that our jobs were being outsourced because they wanted to pay another group less money to do our job. So the fact that there's outrage for this today is actually very heartening. And it actually speaks to where we're at in this situation. This is a reflection of where labor is in America today. That people are tired of being undervalued and making the same amount of money in the face of inflation. Like, your dollar is worth less today than it was years ago, but you're still being paid the exact same. And I think people are just tired of it. And I'm happy this isn't going away. And I don't know at what point, like, the quote unquote games media like collective decided, you know what, we're not going to let this blow over. This is not outrage that should just like be like in one ear out the other by the next week. We're going to keep on this because this is an important story.
And all credit to the games media, but shit keeps happening, you know,
you
does. Have to keep following it.
And like, that's the reason we can't let it die, is we have to keep pushing for change. And the thing about the media right now, though, is it's also a challenge to us. Because on the one hand, yes, absolutely want to keep pushing for change and absolutely want to stay on this topic and keep people accountable. And then there is the rank and file that do want to just make games. And if something goes wrong, it feels like they'll be the first ones let go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And personally, that's been the challenge with me continuing to cover Hearthstone, is because I know that those developers just want to keep making a good game. And to Ben Lee's credit, the new project lead for the game, he's basically said, "Oh, we didn't like hype up the last expansion because there are more important things that need to take center stage." And good on them for that. And it's been challenging to just continue covering that game in the face of everything that's happening, because at the same time, you don't want the rank and file to get punished for any hit to the bottom line. It's been a challenge.
That's why like a boycott of Activision Blizzard is not really super effective here, but it's the thing that people are going to go to first. Now, I don't think that's going to play out in the COD numbers, because I don't think the average COD player gives a shit about the mental health or physical health of a developer. I think they just want to play COD.
That's
so I think that's
an
issue. I think that's an issue that we're going to face in this movement, is that it's not that the news goes away. It's just that there's a group of people who probably don't care.
To that point, Asif, like that's why if we were to stop just covering anything Activision, it would basically be cutting our nose off to spite our face, because a lot of people don't care. But what we can do is we can keep trying to make them aware of what's happening.
And I think we've done a great job at Shacknews this year, where we may cover or write a news story about COD, but we're going to let you know, here's the charities that A Better ABK suggests donating to, you know, in every article. I think that's been a balance that we've tried to reach. And it's, to your point earlier, Ozzy, not covering these games hurts the developers who are still over there fighting from the inside. Right. And it's like, it's been a very challenging coverage, challenge here.
Yeah.
Specifically, something that I'd love to touch on real briefly about this workers' right movement, and it's an area that I'm a little bit ignorant towards, as in I don't know a whole lot about it, but I think it's also critical. It ties into this work from home movement that David mentioned, is that the people in disabled communities, people with disabilities, are now going like, we've asked for a long time to have these rights to work from home, and now you're saying that it's possible because people without disabilities needed to, and that's, I think that's
even with this recent Raven firing, though, I saw specifically they were requiring people to move to Madison, Wisconsin, or be fired. And there are individuals on the QA team with disabilities that are unable to do that. And also asking people to uproot right now during a pandemic is kind of insane.
And I bet you the company was not giving them a dime to relocate.
Exactly.
And you want to talk insane.
Yeah.
That's part of why groups like A Better ABK are so important, because like the media, we do what we can, but there's a lot of outlets out there that are like backed by billionaires as well, and their investment is in getting views by whatever means necessary, and that doesn't necessarily mean covering this stuff with full legitimacy, with full sincerity. And so that's why these groups like A Better Ubisoft, A Better ABK are so important, and why it's so important to echo them, because there's a lot of media out there that isn't putting that struggle at the forefront, that isn't actually like going out of their way. They go out of their way when it suits them, when the SEO suits them. And that's a really unfortunate part of this business as far as like the top contenders go.
Yeah.
There's also outlets that just literally, there's outlets that get paid by Ubisoft or Activision Blizzard to run sponsored content or run ads, run trailers, exclusive trailers, right? There's money handed to these outlets by these companies.
He's not a quote unquote journalist, but we're seeing this with Jeff Keighley right now.
Oh yeah, what's going on with the Game Awards right now, where he really had to step back and be like, hey, it's only Activision nominated for things. But to fact check Jeff on his own bullshit, the board, the advisory board of the Game Awards has the president of Activision Blizzard on there and the CEO of Ubisoft. So to act like that it's just the nominations is factually incorrect, and Jeff should correct himself on that.
Yeah.
Or remove the president of Activision from your board of advisors. That's the other way to go about it. That would honestly probably go a very long way right now.
Yeah, and so.
But who knows? There's not enough time before the awards. We're filming this on Monday. The awards are on Thursday, so I really doubt anything comes of that.
So that's again why these movements are so important, because you gotta have these people are putting themselves at such risk every day to try to continue to keep this conversation going, even in between the ebbs and flows. They keep that conversation going. I mean, it's important to be there to say, and somebody needs to be there to say when Raven QA gets laid off, hey, Bobby Kotick, remember literally a week ago when you said if these things aren't fixed quickly, I might actually consider resigning. And then immediately you go back to that old Activision Blizzard playbook of laying off people for no reason other than to get a couple more bucks to your shareholders.
A playbook that they've been exercising for more than a decade.
And you're talking about risking your career. One of the main proponents of the Apple II movement, I don't know how to pronounce her first name. Is it Janica? Parrish was fired by Apple, and also Jessica Gonzalez, who's one of the organizers of A Better ABK, has resigned just recently, 6 days ago, from Activision Blizzard. These are people that are putting their careers, they're putting their morals or their beliefs ahead of their careers. And what I think's terrible about this industry, and I've seen it way too many times, it uses and abuses very talented people. And I know some brilliant engineers, some brilliant coders who have completely left the video game industry for better companies who are treating them better. And I'm not saying that every tech company is great, but there are some companies out there that treat their employees better than others. I think that the Apple II movement kind of is, we haven't really talked about it as much here, but Apple is widely regarded as this lovely company. Then they make, they make these presentations where they pat themselves on the back for being good to the environment, all these different things. There is some really horrible, insidious stuff going on at that company where they're ignoring blatant claims from employees, and across the board, a lot of these people who are coming forward with accusations are being forced to work with the people they're accusing of harassment for years at times. And it's just it shows the lack of respect from management towards these workers. And I know people who have worked at Apple, and they say it's some of the best work they've ever done, but it might be the worst place they've ever worked. It's the least happy they've ever been. They've been miserable, and they were treated poorly. They worked extremely hard, horrible hours, exhaustion, burnout, all those things. And one thing we haven't really mentioned once in this is crunch. Crunch has been a problem in this industry for a super long time. We saw it last year with Cyberpunk 2077. We've seen it with Borderlands 3 a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember where those Gearbox employees were promised bonuses based on profit sharing, based on metrics that never came to fruition. So there's this abuse goes beyond just sexual harassment, goes beyond equal pay for equal work. It goes beyond there's a systematic lack of respect for workers in some of these companies. And it shows itself through all sorts of horrible things. And that's where I think we finally reached a turning point here, where the workers are fed up with it. And I do think organizing is the way to solve this. And that's what we're kind of seeing here. A better ABK asked Bobby Kotick if he was willing to recognize their union. And he never replied, obviously. But I think that was, we reported on that. That was I feel like a very important moment in the history of this fight.
It's taking things that were widely accepted as just facts of life. And having come from that QA background, crunch is something that we just accepted as something that inherently exists in this industry, and there's nothing that can be done about it. And at some point in the last 2 years, everyone just got up and said, why? Why do we have to accept it? And I think you're right. That is a huge turning point. And I hope that this does lead to more systemic change. This is not a story that's going away. Like, this is going to be something that we're talking about for years to come. And I hope that we do get something better out of it.
One of the things
it affects just so many people, like any walk of life, any ethnicity, any disability, any gender. It just affects so many people.
One of the problems that I have with these giant companies is that if I were to ask Asif, like, Asif knows everyone that works for him. He generally knows what kind of games they play. He knows where they live. He's known them for a long time. He's probably met them at events. He knows what their pets' names are. He knows tons about them. He knows them. And because he knows them, he cares about them. And how many workers at Activision Blizzard have never met Bobby? You know what I mean? Like, how can he be connected to the best interest of people that he has never met? And my point is that it gets so big that even the person at the top and Bobby doesn't have the best of intentions, but even if you had a CEO who had the best of intentions with a huge company, they can't possibly be engaged at every level that they need to be, which means that then you get into a situation where you can have pockets of negativity and abuse and people taking advantage of workers. And in nature of the workplace, the people who get promoted often get promoted not because they're the best people to get promoted, but because of how they angle their career, who they know, how they schmooze. It's necessarily
crony capitalism.
Right. So then you get folks that you get a worker that says, hey, I have been mistreated. And they go to their manager who does nothing because their career goal is to continue to move up the ladder. And to do that, they have to toe the line. And it separates worker from management very, very clearly. And I just think the whole system is messed up to the point where not only do you have people that are just only interested in profits and don't really care about their workers, but you can even have people who do care and are still disconnected.
I'm glad you brought up profit. Let's just look at Activision. This company had a market cap, right, approaching $100 billion this year before everything went to shit for them. To act like making people move to Madison, Wisconsin is going to somehow affect the bottom line materially is nonsense. It's like they're doing this because they're at a weird point in their cycle. Last year was a record year for the video game industry because everyone was locked in their house. People were buying digital over physical copies, right? Margins were insanely high. So they're now, this is literally just finance. They're trying to match or beat very tough year-over-year comparisons. And they're doing it by cutting everywhere they can. And it's the worker always gets hit in the video game industry. Like after Rockstar ships a very big game, there's usually a lot of people let go, right? They keep on some people to keep the game as a service going. In the case of Red Dead Online, right? There's still a team over there. But largely, if you worked on Red Dead 2 and you're not of a certain caliber at that company, you're probably onto something else by now. And it just, I think it makes it, I'm surprised it took this long because the companies don't give a shit about the employees. But the employees just keep getting abused. And at some point you have to realize it's not just Activision. It's not just Ubisoft. Hell, Riot Games has their share of problems, right? Rockstar Games has their share of problems. EA has their share of problems. You know, this is a systemic thing that goes beyond just one company. But at the core is a problem that the entire United States faces right now.
Yeah.
Corporate governance and accountability of billionaires who run these companies. Right now, every billionaire installs their own board of directors that are all their boys and gals, right? And they all have their back. So to really remove a CEO from a position like this, or in the case of Yves Guillemot, like founder CEO, is insanely hard. And that's what we're seeing here. And it's super frustrating. Like I think one of the requests of Better ABK was a seat on the board of directors that was a representative of the workers. And I think that's not just something that should be in video games. Every tech company should have that. And that's like, the problem is the regulators don't give a shit either. So it's really going to have to be one of these scenarios where what I want to see, what I think would really change the game, is a walkout to occur during crunch. If you had a major walkout at a studio during crunch, you're gonna see some change, because at that point dollar signs start flashing in the boardroom, and they're like, "We're losing money." That's when they start to care. You got to hit them in their wallet, and I think it's good that the workers are organizing. They need to time it in a way where they can do maximum damage to the company.
But it's not that
how hard a board would fight back against trying to give up a seat on the board.
Oh yeah.
It whittles away at their control over the worker, and that's not something they'll ever accept.
I think they're going to be forced into it if you're trying to ship, I don't know, XYZ game. I don't want to damn any company or anything, but like, let's say Overwatch 2. You know, like if there was a walkout during crunch for that game.
If you had, I'm sorry, TJ. If you had a walkout of a Call of Duty game during crunch, at that point you invoke the wrath of the gamer towards labor, and that's a risk that they have to weigh as well.
I honestly don't think you should care. I think if you're fed up and you're tired of being treated like this, I think it goes beyond if gamers are mad. Gamers are going to be mad if your game crashes, let alone if it doesn't release.
But the unhinged side of that crowd could make people's lives miserable if they
they're
really
already sending death threats. They're
they
sending
already are,
to these
but
people. You know,
it could get worse though.
I agree. It could get materially worse, Ozzy.
And like,
but that's the escalation that needs to occur here. We're clearly in a conflict. It's like, how can you do the maximum damage if you're the worker? It's bailing out during the busiest time of year. And then what? Like, you're not going to be able to replace your entire team to finish crunch, you know? So I think that's one of those moments that we're going to have to wait for here. It's frustrating. I can tell, like, the figureheads of these movements are exhausted because, to your point, Ozzy, they're already being attacked. Already. So I can't imagine where it's going to go from here. And there's, like, men's rights activists who are targeting these prominent women in the industry with just their scumbag nonsense. And, like... No, it's just... I think that your point is sound, Ozzy, but I still think, like, for there to actually be meaningful change in this industry, there has to be actual financial damage done. The share price dropping in Activision is one thing. I'm talking about their revenues dropping. I'm talking about their earnings dropping, and we're not seeing that yet.
Well, and to that end, like men's rights activists specifically, like, there can't be long periods of silence in between, because the fact of the matter is, one of the biggest problems that every one of these groups is up against is a propaganda machine. And the fact of the matter is, like, it might sound tin pot, but that machine has made it sound tin pot. They've made it sound like unions are the enemy. Look at Amazon. They have full-on, as those folks are trying to unionize, they have executives trying to set up these anti-union meetings where they're trying to push all sorts of just falsified
propaganda. And then you have the people in the unions that have studied this shit at this point for a long time that are finally speaking up to say, no, that's wrong, and we're not going to let you say that here. And
we have any other nominees, or are we ready to vote?
Yeah, that's about it. Like, there can't be silence anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that the two nominees that we've given here were both undeniable trends this year. I nominated GameStop. I'm not voting for GameStop. And honestly, the workers at GameStop need to be treated better too.
Mm-hmm.
They had to work on Thanksgiving.
I feel like this is going to be a unanimous vote.
I think so. Let's vote. I'll start with David.
Workers' rights.
Donovan.
Yeah, workers' rights movement. Just like 2 sentences. This is like you talked about how the GameStop thing went mainstream, right? People were talking about they never did before. Even with the like Activision Blizzard stuff, I had friends like telling me like they didn't feel comfortable like booting up Warzone anymore. Like my friends that don't pay attention to any game industry news, they don't follow that shit. They just watch trailers and play Madden 2K every year, which is fine. But like even those people are like, I don't want to buy like Vanguard this year. So I think it's certainly a trendsetter for them.
Yeah, because
that's my vote.
You know, most consumers work for a living. And if you see a poor work environment, you're going to be like, hey, that's not cool. Eventually. TJ.
Workers' rights.
Ozzy.
Workers' rights.
Bill.
Workers' rights.
Sam.
Workers' rights.
Blake.
Workers' rights.
I'm voting for workers' rights too, even though I nominated GameStop. And also, GameStop employees need better rights too. Ryan Cohen, you've made a fuck ton of money already. Maybe not make your employees work for regular wages on Thanksgiving. Chris.
Workers' rights.
That's it. And I'm going to just assume that Greg and Denny also, I think Greg did pencil in a better ABK. But yeah, it is the entire workers' rights movement that is going to be our trendsetter of the year. So that's a better ABK, a better Ubisoft, hashtag Apple II, all of them. We appreciate the work you folks are doing.
And anybody else who might come along in the next however many months.
Exactly. If there's a movement at Riot, if there's a movement at EA, if there's some company that we don't even realize has been keeping stuff under wraps for a while. I think that's why it's important that we give this trend to a broader term, workers' rights, but it encompasses those trailblazers in this industry, and we really do appreciate everyone who's sacrificing their careers for this. I think it's that I'm fed up, I can't take it anymore kind of moment for this industry, and good on them. People should be paid fairly. They should be treated fairly. There should be equal pay for equal work. And in this world, especially during a pandemic, work from home should be accommodated by these trillion-dollar companies or billion-dollar companies. They act like it's going to kill their company. But come on. It's not. It's going to hurt your margins by a couple percent. You know? And that's it. It's weird. I'm going to hit the gavel, right? But it's like giving an award to workers' rights. Congratulations. You are our trendsetter of the year, 2021, and probably 2022 at this rate.